And I feel like what's happening in the industry is we are messing things up for ourselves as planners. When we tell other planners, just get experience, you do not need a certification, you do not need any additional education, and they're going to these weddings and they're messing things up. They are dropping the ball on things. They're making us as a whole look bad. And then we get mad about that. We get upset that they're only charging, $500 for a coordination package, or we get upset when a venue says we don't allow any more wedding planners to come on our property now. We're doing it to ourselves. Like, we have to tell these planners, when if they're asking what should I do next, we have to tell them, get certified, get an education, get that base knowledge, and then get your experience from there.
Hey everybody, Eddie Babbage here, founder CEO of Timeline Genius, your host of the Wedding Industry Insider Podcast. I am back with another exciting episode. I'm here with Krisy Thomas, owner of Southern Sparkle Weddings, which is a wedding planning company based in Tennessee. Krisy is also the COO of the Certified Wedding Planner Society. Krisy, thank you so much for taking time out to do this interview with me today.
Absolutely, Eddie. It's about time.
Yeah,
I've
we've been
known
talking
you
about
for
this.
so long, so I'm excited to finally be a part of it.
Krisy, this may even sound trite, but it's so true. I literally was just looking forward to getting on and talking to you and interviewing you. It's always such a pleasure every time I talk to you. Yeah, you're a real gem in our
Oh,
industry.
thank
You know,
you.
I already feel that way, but I'll say it again here for all to hear. Um, just so everybody knows, we're going to be unpacking some of the key learnings from your, I think, very instructive and inspiring career. And also, I think you have such a unique vantage point because you're not only an experienced and successful planner, but you're also an educator. And I think there's going to be, yeah, there'll be lots of pearls of wisdom here. But before we get into the nuts and bolts of the interview, would you mind just for people that may not already know you? I know a lot of people in our community already do know you, but for those who don't, can you just give them an introduction to your background and how you got to be where you currently are in the industry?
Yeah, absolutely. So, my journey into wedding planning and now education, honestly, it's one of those things where I feel like every point of my life, even starting as a young kid, has led me to this. So I went to college at MTSU in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. Go Blue Raiders! I wanted to be a news anchor. That had been my dream since I was a young kid. So that's what I went to school for, was to be on TV and to be a news anchor. And I graduated in 2009, which was kind of right in the middle of the recession. So I couldn't find a job in news. But with that, I pivoted. I had to make money. So I started working in the banking industry, and I worked my way up from being just a bank teller to the head teller to being an associate, an assistant, an executive assistant for some of the top people in our bank, and helping them out and being their assistant. And when I got married, I hired a wedding planner and we just clicked. Like, we had so much fun. And at the end of wedding planning, I will never forget our final planning meeting. She was like, "You would be really good at this." And
Wow.
that had never even crossed my mind, but I was just like, "Oh, thanks." So I just thought she was being nice. Like, we just had fun planning. So she was just like, you're good at this. I've been organized. We just had a lot of fun doing planning together. And my mom heard her say that. And after our wedding, she was like, "I think she's right. You would be a really good wedding planner. You should see if you could intern with her or do something." And I just kind of brushed my mom off because I was doing really well in banking. Like, I was just moving on up the corporate ladder. And finally, my mom did her research and she found what was at the time the Bridal Society, which is now the CWP Society. She found that and said, "Look, I think you should really go for this. I will pay for you to go so you can get your certification and hopefully start your wedding planning business." And me, at the time, this was when we were doing all those conferences in person. So it was 2 days in Atlanta. And the thought of going to another state by myself, I'm terribly introverted and really shy. I was like, absolutely not. I'll pay for myself. You come with me. So that way I would have someone
Yeah.
there with me. And I'm not even exaggerating, Eddie. Within the first 5 minutes of Lori speaking, I thought, well, this is about to change my life.
Yeah.
I immediately knew this is what I was meant to do. And after that first day, I went back to the hotel and I started putting in work. I started figuring out what I wanted my business to look like, what my game plan was. And then after I gained my certification, I just took every bit of information that Lori taught us those 2 days and I put it into my business. I put a little Krisy sparkle on it. And within a year of gaining my certification, I had to go to my bank and say, well, this is it. Like I had to quit my 9 to 5 because I needed to invest all of my time and energy into my weddings and into my couples. And then fast forward years later, now I'm working with CWP, which was not on my original game plan. But as I continue to grow my business, I just knowing me, my personality, I love to watch other people succeed. Like that is just who I am. It's ingrained in me. I love those kind of TV shows where people are going through a transformation. So knowing that's who I am personally and knowing how Lori impacted me, I wanted to do the same thing for other wedding planners. I just didn't know how. So I put it in the universe. I mentioned it to my husband. I said, I want to be Lori, but I don't know what that looks like. I want to teach, I want to inspire other wedding planners. And the funny thing is, a few weeks later, she up and calls me. And
Wow.
she had apparently just been watching me and watching me grow my business and mentioned that she is wanting to build her team and have some more educators. And I was like, that's so funny. I was just talking to my husband about this. I just was literally just speaking this into existence. And she's kind of trained me and molded me over the years. And I was an educator, then I became the VP, and now I'm the COO. And it all built from just me wanting to also have that impact and help other wedding planners create a successful business the way that Lori helped me create my successful business.
That's beautiful. And shout out to our shared friend, Lori Hartwell, through whom we met and who has just continued to just do game changing, life changing work in our industry. And yeah, it's really interesting. I think the older I get, it's funny. You've heard me because we've done countless webinars, podcasts, and whatnot in other contexts that I studied math, very much have like the, math and law, like the logic brain. But I feel like the older I get, the more open I become to these sort of metaphysical, call it woo woo, whatever, that like there is something to be said for having the dreams, the intention, and the energy to do certain things. But that's just beautiful, Krisy. Really, really beautiful. So, we were talking a little bit in the pre interview, and you told me that your brain recently has really been kind of crunching on issues around education, certification for the betterment of our industry as a whole. Can you tell me a little bit more about some of these musings that you were having?
And as the industry grows, which has been a phenomenal thing to watch and see, especially within wedding planners, to see so many people want to be start a career in this industry. I'm in a lot of these groups. I see it on threads. I see it in social media of these new planners who are asking for help. They're asking, I want to become a wedding planner. What are the next steps? And I'm seeing a lot of our fellow wedding planners say, just go get experience, get a few weddings under your belt. You're going to learn from that, which is true. Like you do have to get that experience to kind of learn about the industry, but education should also come with that. And I feel like the wedding industry is one of those few industries where we are okay with just getting experience before education. There's not the other industries where it's like, I think about an attorney, I'll
Yeah,
use you as an attorney, like, yeah, Eddie, go ahead, go to court, get a case,
yeah,
the court to judge and figure it out from there. Like, no, you had to go to school for this.
yeah,
And within our industry, obviously there are definitely degrees that you can get, but there's also obviously certifications. And I feel like what's happening in the industry is we are messing things up for ourselves as planners. When we tell other planners, just get experience, you do not need a certification, you do not need any additional education, and they're going to these weddings and they're messing things up. They are dropping the ball on things. They're making us as a whole look bad. And then we get mad about that. We get upset that they're only charging, $500 for a coordination package, or we get upset when a venue says, we don't allow any more wedding planners to come on our property now. We're doing it to ourselves. Like we have to tell these planners when, if they're asking, what should I do next? We have to tell them, get certified, get an education, get that base knowledge, and then get your experience from there.
yeah. I feel like that's such a great it really does highlight the point when you compare it to other fields. And it's weird because I think that the similarity with, say, law, I'll speak to that because, I
Yeah.
went to law school, practiced law for a few years, is actually pretty striking because theoretically, you don't necessarily need to go. I always think of that Chris Rock joke where he's like, you can drive a car with your feet, but that don't make it a good idea. He's like, you can do it, but like, there really is, and I think the magic happens between the two, right?
Yeah.
It's not just like go get certified and don't couple that with real world experience because you're going to have to get the real world. But the magic is like in the two. And if you can have somebody like you and Lori, emptying your brains and just pouring out like years and years and years of collective wisdom, then you get to kind of shortcut this learning curve. Like, what in your mind, Krisy? And I know you're such a textbook sort of case
Yeah.
study in of yourself, but what in your mind stands out as like the biggest benefits that you see just on the whole? Because you see people going through the certification like year in, year out. What are some of the big benefits that you see people getting from being certified?
I guess I can kind of talk about this from two ways. And I can talk about planners who are brand new, just starting out.
Hmm.
They're getting that foundation. So
Hmm.
that way, when they book a client, they are not making mistakes for one day that your couples cannot do over. So getting that base foundation, that knowledge to just do things right the first time around. But then I also see the benefit for my planners who have been doing this for a while and maybe they just got that experience alone and that's what they're relaying their education on is, I messed up a few weddings, but this is how I do things within my business. I've heard about the certification. Let me get it and see what happens from there. A lot of times they either realize, oh man, I've been doing things incredibly wrong, or I've been doing things pretty good. Like I haven't really messed things up too bad, but having this certification now allows me to make things a lot better. And not only that, but it comes with all of this additional free education because this is an industry that is always changing. You, in order to stay on top of it, you have to be constantly plugged in, and that's why we do have that free education with CWPs, because we want our members to constantly grow and evolve even outside of just that base certification. You have to want to invest in yourself and your education, but we didn't want that free additional education to come with the paywall. We wanted to be able to give it to them every single week for free to help them grow. I feel like ultimately, like the difference that I see with CWP is our ultimate goal. We truly, truly, truly do want wedding planners to succeed. Like that is what drives me as an educator is I want our CWPs to be able to grow into this industry and education. And like you said, also applying that education is going to be the best way for you to grow into a phenomenal wedding planner.
Absolutely. And what do you think are some of the biggest obstacles that you see that keep people from taking? I mean, from my vantage point, Chrissy, I mean, we've talked about this again on in other contexts, but I just think that investing in one's own education, growth, coaching, mentorship, it's just so hard to go wrong there. And when you
Yeah.
get it right, the returns are like just geometric. Like it's not just like dollar in gets a dollar out. It's like dollar in gets like $100 out.
Yeah.
Like because you keep that training for the duration of your career and even life. Some of the stuff like that. I mean, I've been to. I remember like as you were describing, your personal experience. I remember going back when they were in person. And I know that all of that is now just bundled up and distilled into the online versions. But I've seen the magic firsthand. I've seen the transformation from other attendees, both newbies and people that kind of came in like, I already know what I'm doing, to wow, that just blew my mind. Um, but what are some of the obstacles? Like you guys have made it so affordable.
Yeah.
Like why doesn't everybody just do this? Like what are the obstacles that are keeping people in their own mind from taking advantage of what you guys are offering?
I think probably for our more established planners, it definitely has to do honestly with ego. And especially when you've got a few years of experience under your belt, you have seen a lot. You probably have seen it all as a wedding planner with a few years under your belt. That in your head, you think, well, I don't need education. I
Mm,
learned all this through my experience. And I
mm,
think that stops a lot of experienced and more established seasoned wedding planners from gaining their certification. And what we try to talk about in one of our podcast episodes, we talked about this is it is so much more than just a certification. You can take the certification and yes, realize I'm doing everything right, pat myself on the back, well done. But you get that community of other wedding planners. You are also able to get access to our templates and that weekly education. It's so much more than just that piece of paper, and it's because of how we've modeled the business and that we want you to continue to grow and get your education. But I do think ego has a lot to do with it, especially if you are active in these social media groups where people are telling you you don't even need education to begin with. Then why would I get it? Why, if that's what the word, if that's what everyone is thinking, then why would I get that education? And it's doing more harm to them than good, that's for sure. And it's also doing a lot more harm to the industry than we realize.
So there's a book I'm rereading because I do these audiobooks with my oldest son. There's a book by Ray Dalio. He's the founder of one of the most successful, investment funds ever. It's called Bridgewater, and his book is called Principles. And basically, his whole sort of theory and what he says made him so successful. He's like, I distilled these like principles for success. Every time I'd learn something, have a failure or have a success, whatever, I would take note of the rules. Like the dude literally just has this whole like code of rules for living a successful life. And ego really comes into it. I literally was just listening to this. He's like, I was like struck down. Like, I mean, he like lost everything before he, rebuilt and became successful because he's like, I had hubris and ego about like, I know what's right. I put all of my money into the market only to be very humbled. And I mention that because I think that ego in all of its forms in our personal relationships, we can talk about it, but also in business, I've noticed, I don't want to get myself in trouble, but we're just going to, this is real talk. I've noticed over the years, Krisy, even when I was first researching Timeline Genius, that there is this like latent sense of ego that's sort of unique to planners. And I can say this because, I love wedding planners. I have come to just be eternally grateful to the wedding planning community. I love wedding planners. So this is coming from a place of love and observation such that people can hopefully get over some of these hurdles. And I think it might come from the fact that, like, this is my own sort of theory. You're doing all this work, amazing work, you're under the gun, and it's not like anybody comes at the end of every day and pats you on the back and says, wow, you just freaking saved the day. Like, I feel like so much of the amazing work and putting your heart and soul into this, it's like it's going unnoticed. And there's this way in which I feel like planners are almost kind of like starving for that sort of pat on the back and just jumping at this opportunity to be like, I know what I'm doing. Like, in my case, I'd be talking to them about like, a way to do timelines. And what I always heard, oh, my timelines are the best timelines. Like, and I'm like, if you only know how many times I heard that, like I've heard that 200 times this month. And it's not to integrate the quality of anybody's timeline, but you can just kind of feel, and I feel like self-confidence is good, but when ego reaches that point of like, I know, and now you're closing off access to new information, that's
Exactly.
really detrimental. And I say that again from a pure place of love. Hopefully, people can take that. But I just wouldn't want people to miss out on new educations and certifications because you're like, I already know everything. No, you don't. And
You
what you do
don't.
is changing. Like,
Exactly. And even as an educator and someone who has years and years of experience in wedding planning, I do not know it all. I am constantly soaking up and trying to get information and knowledge. Lori Hartwell's the same way. I joke, she's been in the industry for, I think, 32, 33 years at this point. I joke with her, I'm like, you've been in the industry since 1860, and yet she still craves education.
yeah,
And that's kind of the mindset that we have to have, is that what it does, and that doesn't take away or devalue our experience that we've taught ourselves or that we've learned through the weddings that we've worked with, or that the systems that we've built with our business. Why not see if there's another way that you can do it, a way that maybe can make it better, a way that can probably book you more clients? That's what education opens the door to. It doesn't take away or discredit what you've built. All it does is add to it. And that to me is a phenomenal thing about education as a wedding planner, is everything that I've been taught with CWP, all it's done is made my business even better. It's made my business what it is. And it's because I don't have that mindset of I know it all. Trust me, I've done a lot. I've experienced a lot, but I'm constantly looking for ways to make my business better. And that's what education does.
I love that. You know, another principle from the Ray Dalio book, he says that evolution is basically the most powerful, like, driving force of nature.
Mm.
Like, and even in the time that I've been in the industry since 2013, when I started researching Timeline Genius, like, the changes that we've seen, like, so this, the idea of being like knowledgeable and adept at your trade is not a fixed concept. Like,
Yeah.
it's changing every year, right? And how do you all at the Certified Wedding Planner Society, how do you all kind of keep up with, I kind of know some of the answers to what I'm asking, but I want to hear you just elaborate on it from your perspective. How do you keep your materials in sync with the changing times?
Something that we do for our weekly workshops. So we do have the free Wednesday workshops for our members. Every single week, it's free education. And we actually don't plan that out super far in advance. We try to take it by quarter, what it's going to look like for that month. So each month kind of has a different topic and a focal point. And every single week, we talk about that. And we get what our topic is going to be just based off the industry, based off our members. We have a lot of one-on-one coaching calls. What are our planners struggling with? What are we seeing that's adjusting and adapting in the industry? Who is our new clientele? Like, what generation at this point is getting engaged and getting married and searching for wedding pros? And that's kind of how we adjust and figure out what needs to be taught. And even one of something that we started at the beginning of the year, and this was so impactful for our members and getting the emails of how much this changed their life, was even as simple as like how we onboard our clients, how we do initial consultations, which you would think would just stay the same for the most part. No, it's changing because who we're in front of, who's engaged in that age group, that demographic is changing. So how we present our packages needs to be updated and changed. How we even send out emails needs to be updated and changed. So it's constantly just this evolving machine because the industry is always evolving. And because the industry is always evolving, we have to stay plugged in and make sure our planners have the most up to date information and knowledge because it's going to impact them. If I were to stay in the way that I was doing my business when I first started, I would not be in business right now. I would not be in business at all, but I've had to pivot. I've had to adjust. I've had to recreate and do things based off of how the industry is changing. And that's kind of how we at CWP, we just try to stay plugged in what our members are going through. And that's how we base our education.
So, and we'll come back to this again, but since we're talking about certifications, getting certified, how can people get certified if they hear this, wake up from the sleep they've been in, and they say, "I want to do this"? Like, how can they do it?
Absolutely. So just visit our website, cwpsociety.com, and then you can check out the different memberships that we have. I think we just recently launched an associate certification, and that is for planners who are either working under an established planning team or want to work for another wedding planning team. It's different in the mindset because how we teach owners and how we teach associate planners is very different. With the associate certification program, we really talk to them about the policies you have to make sure that you're respecting the owner. Everything goes back to the owner. The fact that you're representing this company, that's so important. And we started this because we found that a lot of our owners and our lead planners were having issues with their associate planners not really knowing the proper etiquette of how to be an associate planner or how to represent their company. So that's where we have our new associate certification program. But our big Mac Daddy, as I call it, our wedding planning certification, that's going to be for those planners who either own their own business or have goals of owning their own business. That one's going to give you the base of how to really operate and run and establish your business, how to make your business better as well.
I love it. So this is a little bit of a tangent. I feel like, but one that's interesting to me. Knowing you, knowing Lori, I think this does tie back to the CWPS, which is you all very much espouse, the notion of, integrity, kindness, and these sort of values that, frankly, very much just sort of align with me and the ethos of Timeline Genius. When I Every time I've interacted with you, Krisy, I said this at the beginning of the interview, and it's not just idle talk. Like, you've always just felt like just such a kind-hearted, warm, genuine person. At this age, I just feel like there's almost two buckets of people, right? They're just people that you're just like, I, yeah, let me just hang out with this person anytime, any day. I'm going to leave. My bucket is going to be fuller. Like, I'm going to be happy. And then there are other people that aren't exactly that way, right? It's not to say they're bad. It's just like it can be. But I wonder, um, in the context of being a wedding planner, um, because you mentioned this actually at the in the pre-interview, that there can be this conception, and I know everybody's got a different person. Everybody's a snowflake, right? We all need to be our own beautiful, unique selves, and not everybody's built the same way. But you spoke to this almost stereotype of like the boss bitch, like wedding planner personality. Like that's not you in
No.
my mind.
Yeah.
Like you to me are what I described. How does that translate to the business of wedding planner? Like having that warm, soft, kind personality. How has that impacted the course of your wedding planning business?
I agree because you would think that being that way would not aid to my success because as a wedding planner we are the leader of the ship. We're the captain of that ship when it comes to wedding day. Everyone's looking to us for guidance. I'm having to wrangle cats basically with the wedding party and the family and all the vendors. So you would think that being a kind person is just not going to be possible. You have to be bossy. You have to know how to boss people around. And I know how to boss people around, but I do it in such a way because that's just who I am. I always do it with kindness and grace. I always treat people with respect. And it's really actually helped me in my business. And I kind of modeled my business after this based off of some of the reviews that I would receive from my past clients and my fellow wedding pros, where in the reviews I would say, God, the way Krisy plans, she plans with kindness and grace. She's so great to work with. She's so kind. She's so thoughtful. And that's kind of how I built my model and how I established my relationships with my couples and with the wedding pros I work with. My business is built on relationships. That is honestly how I book all of my clients. And it's because of how I treat people. And I know how to lead. I know how to make a wedding day be as efficient as possible. But I do so in such a way where people can actually listen and hear me because I'm listening and hearing them versus yelling and screaming and pointing. Like that's just not who I am. I've never been that person. And like I mentioned, my business is built on relationships, and it's because I'm so intentional about every interaction that I have with people. I want them to know that I'm focused on them. With my couples, I truly, genuinely want their wedding day to be a reflection of them and their love story. And the best way I can do that is by getting to know them, being intentional about asking them these personal questions. And if I know they went on vacation a couple weeks ago, hey, how was your vacation? Like me just really getting to know them. And it's so funny. I had a venue tour a couple weeks ago, and with the venue manager, I knew it was her husband's birthday coming up. I said, hey, how was his birthday? And she was like, how did you know that? Like, she's like, you remember everything. But I'm so intentional about it because to me, relationships are everything. And when it comes to my vendors, because ultimately, and I tell my couples who book with me during the consultations, part of my job is also allowing your vendors that you hire to be able to do their job. So I communicate with them. We collaborate. I'm never going to bulldoze another wedding print vendor because I don't know how to do their job. I don't want to do their job, but they're being paid to do a job. And as the planner, the best way that I can create this wonderful vendor team is by allowing everyone to do their job and collaborating with them. So asking the photographer, how much time do you need, for the day? Talking to the hair and makeup artist. Okay, this is the hard stop based off the photographer's timeline. These are all the people who are getting hair and makeup done. How much time do you need? And apparently that's not normal within the industry. That collaboration, I see it so many times in social media, people complaining about wedding planners just taking a timeline and bulldozing it and not collaborating with it. I want my vendors to be able to do their job well. I want them to have a good time on wedding day. Therefore, I'm collaborating, I'm communicating with them, I'm respecting them, and I'm just being a good friend ultimately. And that to me is how I built my business, was based off of my relationships. All of my business comes from referrals, whether it's past clients or my fellow wedding pros, and that all I think stems down to how I treat people.
I love that so much, Chrissy. I really wanted to hear your thoughts on that because I feel like A, the world needs more kindness and grace, and B, it's a personality trait that I think that a lot of people that are wedding planners naturally share, and I want to kind of give light to embolden that part for them to bring that part of themselves forward and see in our society. I'm a student of business and entrepreneurship, and there very much is this stereotypical, oftentimes male, but like the Steve Jobs, Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, Mark Cuban, Bill Gates, not so much now, but in his earlier days, like these are people, Michael Jordan,
Yeah.
no disrespect to these people because they've accomplished beyond extraordinary things that have changed the world and given to society, but the method that they've used and is one of overtly shouting at people and screaming,
Mhm.
and some of these things that, for me they just don't fit. But again, in the collective psyche, it kind of becomes like, oh, well, that's what the key to success is. I have to be bossy and know how. And I just really, Jim Collins, I think it was Good to Great, but he talks about level 5 leadership and kind of debunks a lot of this and talks more about people that are obviously, you got to be thorough. You got to handle your business. You can't just be nice and fluffy and not know what you're doing. That
Yeah.
doesn't work. But like being competent, but also being like, again, back to ego, like ego free, and just I just think that's a beautiful thing. When you say, can you tease that out just a little bit more? When people have reflected back to you the words kindness and grace, are there any other sort of examples of that? Because it may be something that other people listening right now can bring into their business. Other ways in which kindness and grace have kind of entered into
Yeah.
your services.
Absolutely. I think because on wedding day, I joke with my potential couples and my clients, like there is no such thing as a perfect wedding day. There's just not. Things go wrong, things will happen. But the good thing is with me on your team, you won't know about it. And even if it's something where it's, quite obvious, like the building's on fire, I will still have a smile on my face. And I think that also, how I operate in that is when things do go wrong, because I handle it in such a cool and calm manner. I may be on the inside dying. I may be screaming internally, like, oh my gosh, this building is on fire. But on the outside, I'm cool and I'm calm and I'm collected. That carries over into the entire wedding day because on wedding day, ultimately, everyone's looking at me to how to react because I'm the wedding planner. So if I am reacting in a way that is negative, rude, hostile, it trickles down to everyone else. But if I am being me and being Krisy and being fun and kind and with a smile on my face and getting things done, but doing so in a positive way, it trickles down. And that has helped me with my vendors. Like my vendors recognize that. My vendors actually want to work with me. And because of that, when they know they have a couple who doesn't have a wedding planner, they're like, oh, you have to have Krisy. She's going to make the wedding day amazing. But things go wrong. Like there's no such thing as a perfect wedding day. But because of my mindset and my attitude, and fixing things. And that's another thing about me too. And if I'm faced with a problem, you need to come with me with a solution. Like I don't come to me and saying, hey, the cake is falling unless you have a backup cake ready. Like don't come to me without a plan B in place. That's just how my brain works. So I'm constantly, obviously working with kindness and grace, and I'm also constantly working with, okay, so what's the solution here? I don't like when there's not an answer to be to be made with any problem.
As a wedding planner, you know how important it is to create detailed wedding day timelines for your events. But creating your timelines can be a tedious and time-consuming job. Until now. Because Timeline Genius lets you create beautiful, detailed wedding day timelines with ease. And it keeps everything you need on the wedding day in one central place. Here's how it works. First, Timeline Genius saves all your clients, vendors, and venues in your Rolodex, so you don't lose time looking for their information. And when you're ready to create a new timeline, you simply enter the key information for your wedding. Click a button, and voila! Timeline Genius magically gives you a customized timeline for your event, where all the details are laid out and the times are calculated for you. From there, you can easily edit your timeline by adding or deleting items, inserting images, changing font styles, and customizing everything to your liking. You can also instantly shift the times for as many items as you want. And when it comes to your clients and vendors, Timeline Genius lets you give them the highest level of service. You can send them tailored timelines, showing only the items they're involved in. And you can collaborate by inviting them to a mobile-friendly, web-based version of the timeline. You can even set text message reminders to automatically go out on the wedding day. And once you've completed your perfect timeline, you can download it or email it out as a beautifully styled PDF. And that's Timeline Genius, a smart software that will help take your wedding planning to the next level. Start your free trial today.
It's funny, when I was a kid, I remember my dad saying that. He was running a business at the time, and he's like, there are two kind of mindsets. One is like, hey, this is broken. And oftentimes if you run a business, like, that can happen. Like, hey, this is broken. It's like, don't just tell me something's broken. Like, do that extra step of helping. Like, that's kind of that ownership, A grade mindset. That's really interesting. So it's funny. You're kind of alluding to this a little bit, Krisy, and everybody knows it. Wedding planning is incredibly difficult, challenging, stressful, and not just being a planner, but also running a company means you're a wedding planner, but you're also an entrepreneur. So that's a whole other set of things, from marketing and contracts and all this stuff.
Yeah.
Can you tell me, over the years, what has been one of the most significant but also instructive challenges that you've faced as a wedding planner and overcome? Because again, I think people can learn from you without ever necessarily hitting those obstacles. They can learn from the fact that you hit them, figured out how to get through them. Like, tell me some of the biggest obstacles, one of the biggest obstacles that you've hit, and what you learned from getting around it.
I think for me, and this is just how I've always been, when I have a goal in mind, when I know I want to accomplish something, I go all in. And which is great. Like, that's just been built in me from I joke with my mother, like, that's that DNA that I have from her, where I just have this passion for excellence. And in the past, it was a passion for perfection. And I realized that perfection does not exist. In fact, striving for perfection is what actually led me to being burnt out of this industry, because obviously I just want to be the best planner I can be for every single person that's in front of me. And figuring out that balance of having a life outside of what I do, what my career is, because I just would put all of my energy and effort into growing and building this business, that I forgot about everyone else. My family, my husband, and I most certainly forgot about myself. I was nowhere in that. Taking care of me was not part of it at all. So I got a point in my career where everyone else, my business, my couples, my clients, my vendors, everyone else was getting so much of me that I was slowly sinking. Like, I kind of picture it like in the movie Get Out, where I'm just like falling and I can't see what's ahead of me. Yeah, exactly. And that's where I got to a point where I hated the industry. And that was my cue of like, oh, you've got to do something different with your business because you love this industry. And when I was starting to resent it, that was my cue of, okay, you've got to restructure something. What does this look like for you? And for me, that kind of just meant taking on less weddings, only booking, my full service package, because, my mindset is getting to know my couples. If I'm doing that 35 times a year, really investing in my couples, it was just so much. So now I'm just even more intentional about the load that I take on. And it's still a work in progress. Every day, I still have to remind myself to put me somewhere on that checklist and taking care of me and my needs. It's hard as a planner. I think a lot of planners can relate to this because we're in naturally people pleasers, and we forget about us in that please. We also have to make sure that we keep us in that somehow. It's hard. It's a struggle, and it's something I'm not even gonna lie. I work on it daily. Like this week,
What does taking care of you mean, Krisy? What does it mean to take care of yourself?
Even as simple as me eating lunch, Eddie. Like, I can literally sit in this chair in this office from 9 till 3 o'clock to pick my kids up and realize you haven't stood up. You have not even had a bite to eat. And it's because when I do that, where it's like 9 to 3 wedding planning, CWP, that's all I'm focused on. And then from 3 to the rest of the night, it's my kids. And then I'm like, oh, I get an hour or I get 30 minutes before bed. Being able to put myself in there somewhere is something I work on a regular basis.
I asked that because I know from the outset of Timeline Genius, I mean, there are different people that we serve, you know, and not everybody is married, not everybody has kids, but there very much is a segment of people that are listening to us right now that I think can empathize with the idea of being a business owner, being a wedding planner, being a wife, and being a mother. And all of those roles
Yeah.
are very demanding, especially the parenting one and the
Yeah.
wedding planning and business. Like those three, but tell me a little bit more. You know, the guys in the audience might get a little mad, but I've been married. My wife and I got married in 2010, and she's amazing. You've met Brooke.
Mhm.
I no matter how much I do or try to do, and I do anything my wife wants me to do, basically, because she's so amazing. There's just some way in which women just handle business, man. Like
Yes.
whether it's the birthday parties, and I don't mean to make gender-based stereotypical statements here, but there's a way, and a lot of this comes just from talking to the planners that that we serve, that I personally have the privilege of serving. There are a lot of wedding planners out there that are just carrying a heck of a load, like in the household, in business, and as the planner. Can you talk a little bit more about how you manage those three roles: business owner, planner, and mother?
Gosh, it is a struggle. Even just for
Yeah,
this weekend, when you mentioned birthday party, my son, we had his birthday party, and of course, I'm a planner, so there's nothing little
right.
about my children's birthday party. It's over the top and extra. Honestly, the way that I have found my balance is for sure kind of blocking things off where and this has helped. I know once 3 o'clock hits, if I don't have like an afternoon meeting, I am 100% focused in on my afternoon responsibilities, which is my kids and their activities and things like that. I think a lot of the times what does help, even if we can't, if the balance is off one day, it helps to give yourself grace and it helps to have someone to talk to about it, just to vent, even just to say, it's been a long day. I am struggling today, just to get it off your chest. Because I think a lot of the times in this world of entrepreneurship, especially something like wedding planning, where you may have a team, but it's day up, like you don't have a team in your home office, it can be quite lonely. This can be, you can feel very alone because the stress that we deal with as a wedding planner is like none other. Like, I mean, I think we're ranking like the top three most stressful
Yeah.
jobs in the world. And when you're working for yourself, by yourself, you can feel like you're alone in that. And having someone to lean on, whether that's especially another wedding planner, God, that is so helpful because no one knows our struggles like we know our struggles. So having that person to kind of vent to, that you can trust and know that you can kind of just give them all this information about what you're struggling with. But ultimately, that balance is try to time block things off, making sure that you're putting yourself in your calendar, but also giving yourself that grace because every single day is going to look different, especially when you have kids. Like I had full intentions last Friday on getting a ton of work done for getting my kids right out of school. So I had to completely pivot. And in that moment, I got really upset at myself because I had all these things blocked out, but I had to remind myself, okay, you've got to pivot. Your kids are home, figure things out, work around it, and just giving myself that grace. And that's something too, in true transparency, Eddie, that's something I struggle with is giving myself grace. And it's because I'm constantly striving for excellence that when I don't meet that level, I can tend to beat myself up. And that's something that I know probably not a lot of your listeners may be can totally relate to, but it's hard. It's hard when that's my personality type. I constantly have to kind of work on my own mindset shift and not being bad, beating myself up because I wasn't able to completely fulfill that goal for the day or whatever that looks like.
Why do you think it's important to give yourself that grace? At the risk of asking an obvious question, like what are some of the downsides or ill effects when you don't kind of stop and conscientiously say, I'm going to give myself a little grace here? Like, what's the downside of somebody not giving
I mean, if
grace?
you don't, it's not realistic to be at that level all the time. It's
Right.
things are going to change and pivot and adjust. And if you don't give yourself that grace, that internally is just going to erode at you, where all you're doing is just kind of beating yourself up over it. You're talking negative to yourself. that's just going to erode and on the inside that can then also possibly come out on the outside where you finally snap and you snap at someone who doesn't deserve it, who it was not intended for. You have to give yourself that grace. And again, that's something that I'm constantly working on, because if not, it can really put you in a really dark space.
Yeah. No, I love that, Krisy. What year did you start Southern Sparkle?
Oh gosh, what was that? 2012 maybe?
So,
It's been
so
so long.
it's feel like me, like the years
I'm
just.
like,
It used
here's
to be like, oh, that was junior year. Now it's like, what
what?
year?
Yeah.
Is that?
So
Which
it's 2012, I believe.
15 years later? Like, I asked because my hypothetical question for you, Lori and I always joke about like having a time machine, a DeLorean, and whatnot. If I gave you a real world time machine and let you go back to 2012, Krisy, that was starting your wedding planning company, and you could just talk to her for a minute, what would you say?
Oh gosh. That kind of makes my eyes water. I don't know why that makes my eyes water to think about going back. I would probably tell her, future me, this journey is going to be amazing. I'm so incredibly proud of you. Oh my gosh, I'm going to cry on your podcast.
Beautiful.
Because and it's funny because when I talk to other wedding planners about their career and their journey, and with wedding planning, there is a lot of comparison. And I always tell them, like, you cannot compare your chapter 1 to my chapter 10 or my chapter 15. You cannot do that, because I was exactly where you were. When I first started my business and I got my certification, I had one booked client that I had severely undercharged myself, and went into that rehearsal like my knees were shaking. Like I almost thought I was going to pass out because
Mhm,
I was so scared and so
mhm.
anxious. But I went through that process, and I wouldn't change a thing. If I were to go back in a time machine, I would not change a thing about my journey, because everything that I went through, all the struggles I went through, only having, one couple that year I'm trying to build my business, just having that one client allowed me to really focus on my brand. It allowed me to really hit the ground and meet the venues in my area and the vendors. So it was a blessing that I only had that one client, because then I had more time to focus on my branding and my business. And even the year where we as a company as a whole, we had 52 weddings, which I will never do again. I
Ah,
wouldn't I wouldn't take away that year, because I learned balance that year. I learned the power of the word no that year. So every negative part of building my business has really created me and formed me into the business owner I am today. And I'm so grateful for that. And I would go back and let her know I'm so proud of you, because I don't tell myself that enough. Since I am such a striver for excellence, when I do hit that goal, in my head, I'm like, okay, check, next. Like I don't ever sit and dwell in, okay, what a big deal. Like this is huge that you accomplished this goal. I don't ever sit in that moment. And I would tell that past Krisy, like I'm so proud of you. You're going to be so proud of the journey that you're about to take.
well, now you're giving me the feels, Chrissy. That is so beautiful. No, I just think that's beautiful. And hopefully, everybody else, I think people will be able to feel the sincerity and depth and beauty of what you're saying, even just through their headphones or car speaker right now, because I find myself kind of thinking, and hopefully, other people were doing this as well. I feel like we could all do that a little bit more.
Yeah.
I think we all kind of I can't remember. I was doing another interview here on our podcast, and somebody said, remember that where you are today was at one point where you were dreaming of getting to.
Yeah.
For most of us, I think that's the case, right? Like you look up, but when you get here, the tendency is to kind of just take it for granted. And if anything, just be focused on the next thing. I got to get to the next thing. We got to grow. We got to get bigger. We got to do this and got to fix this and that. But like, take a step back and like just appreciate where you are, and that notion of feeling like you're proud, like proud of yourself the same way you would like your kid. If
Exactly.
they did something, you give
Yeah.
them a hug, like, I'm so proud of you. It's like amazing what you've done. That is
And it's
such a
the same
I
way I would treat other wedding planners. And it's funny,
that's
Lori and I were having a conversation yesterday about this, because I'm so bad about it for myself. I will celebrate the heck out of other people. Like I love it so much, but I forget to do it for myself. And we were talking about, this was a few years ago, but Martha Stewart Weddings named me one of the top wedding planners to follow. And I was on the list with some celebrity wedding planners. Like one of them was the Real Housewife of Miami. And I was like, what am I doing on this list? Like this must be a mistake. And she was like, stop that. You are on that list because you're good at your job, because you are a phenomenal wedding planner just as much as they are. And I forget that. I tend to, my accomplishments, I tend to kind of water down a little bit, but I don't do that for others. So it's something that I need to work on for me is being proud of the things I've accomplished.
The other beautiful thing about your answer, Krisy, and I really, really appreciate this because I feel the exact same way. One of the things I say very often when I say my morning prayers is just thanking God for every moment of my life, not just the ones that were fun, easy, seemingly successful, but for the challenging moments too. Like I wouldn't trade not a single second of my experience of my life experiences, and I really appreciate that. So it makes it a little hard, I think, for people that have that orientation the way that you and I do. Like I really am regret free. Not that I haven't made mistakes. Lord knows I've made my share of mistakes, but it's that I'm appreciative that like I needed to make those mistakes to learn and to grow and to become who I am in this moment. That said, so it's hard to ask this hypothetical, but I'm going to go back to it again and say, let's say I give you the time machine, okay?
Okay. I'm in
And
it.
it's a little
I'm
weird because buckle up. It's a little weird because you don't want to change a thing. But let's just say I said your mandate is maybe this Krisy that you're going back to visit is going to go down a different timeline and you're going to come back here. And your sole purpose in life is to try to help her achieve success a little more quickly. Maybe
Mm.
help her skip around a couple of those potholes that you stepped into, like just whatever to help her hack success a little more efficiently. What would you say to Krisy, past Krisy, if that were the mandate?
Honestly, so this is funny, and Lori's going to get a chuckle out of this. So obviously, I took my I took my certification, and everything I really put into play. But there was one part that she talked about, which was building your approved vendor list and only working with people on this vendor list because those are people that you know are going to do a good job.
Love it.
There were some weddings where I was like, yeah, I'll work with this DJ, no big deal. And oh my gosh, she almost ruined the wedding. So I look back at that and I'm like, Jesse, why didn't you listen to Lori about the approved vendors? And I see it a lot in these groups and with our coaching calls. They're like, I should have listened to you guys. I'm working with these awful vendors. I would change that because there were some weddings where I kept thinking if I was not here, this person would have ruined these weddings. And I'm like, the stress of that, I would change that. I would have 100% listen to
Absolutely.
Lori and only work with approved vendors because some of these vendors, oh gosh, the stories I could tell. But then again, I think, well, I use those stories to tell my couples, like, this is why I
Yeah,
have a vendor
sure.
list
And now
because
you
this
tell other
DJ
people.
pronounced the couple's name wrong. The
Right,
caterer was late and it
right,
was a no
right.
show. The baker's cake melted and fell apart. Like, oh gosh, I would definitely change that part of my career as a whole. Um, Honestly, I think that's it because realistically, the way that my career panned out, God, God's timing was just perfect. Every single thing, the timing was so spot on that it's wild to look at. I even think about there was one year where I had no October weddings booked. And October in Tennessee is like peak wedding season. It's the most beautiful time of year to get married in Tennessee. And I kept thinking, what is happening? Like, why do I not have any October weddings booked? And fast forward a few weeks later, I found out I was pregnant with my son and he was due in October. And I'm like,
Me.
well, that timing was, how that worked out. I generally, I do think everything in my journey and my career as a wedding planner has been spot on with God's timing and where it should have been.
That is such a beautiful and I think healthy. I know these are subjective matters, it's a matter of opinion, but I think that's such a beautiful, perspective. I'm going to shift gears for just a sec, and then I have a
Yeah.
couple more questions. I knew the time would fly talking to you. I want
But always does.
I just want to tell folks listening, if you're a wedding planner and you are still using Google Docs or Google Sheets or any other tool besides Timeline Genius to do your timelines and your wedding checklist, I want you to know there's a better way. You can go to timelinegenius.com, just watch the teaser video on the homepage. It's a software that me and just an amazing team of technical, folks, developers, designers, and loads and loads and loads of input from amazing wedding planners like you, Krisy, and Lori, and other beautiful people in our industry. We've built this to just be far and away the world's best tool for creating your wedding day timelines. I know how important the day of timeline is. I know how important your planning checklist is. And we just wanted to give you a way to save tons of time and to help reduce some of that stress that we were talking about,
Mhm.
Krisy, that goes along with being a planner. So yeah, go to TomLegends.com, start a free trial. I think you'll be amazed. Krisy, you
Absolutely.
don't have to
I
open
can
here, but
preach
if you
on
want to
this.
say anything
I may.
as a
Well, now I'm like, let me change my answer because I remember sitting on Timeline Genius for a solid year, a
that's
year,
right. I
where
remember that.
I got it and I was like, okay, I'm going to block off this particular month to learn the product because I was still using Excel spreadsheets and I was like, I'm going to have to learn this whole new software. It's going to be so much work. And then when that day finally came and I sat down and was ready to learn Timeline Genius, it took me all of 30 minutes and I was so mad at myself that I wasted an entire year of not using Timeline Genius. And so I would go back in the time machine and change that because Timeline Genius truly was a game changer for my business. And I was so mad at myself that I sat on it for so long thinking it was going to be hard to use. So if you are a planner listening and who's been doing this, and I've seen it, I actually saw it in a Facebook forum post where someone's like, thinking about Timeline Genius, it seems like it's too hard. And I was like, no, it's not. Do not. I promise you, I had the same mindset and I was so wrong. Do not sit on it. Honestly, these are the types of things that we teach too at CWP. There are certain tools and tech that's going to not only allow you to be more efficient in your business, but also allow you to book clients. I book clients through Timeline Genius all the time, not just with my initial consultation presentation, because that's something we also teach at CWP, where we have this beautiful presentation on how you can showcase your portfolio of what you bring to the table as a wedding planner, but also on the day of, because of my of my text message reminders that are being sent out. It is blowing the minds of my vendors and of the wedding party members who are like, did you just get that text from the wedding planner? Like it, and that has helped me sell myself and my what I do as a planner because they are blown away by that. And that's just, part of my tech stack that I have with Timeline Genius and then how it allows me to operate my business. But it allows me to book couples. And it's mind blowing how that works. But it truly, 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 truly does.
Thank you so much for that, Krisy. I'm going to put you on the spot here.
Yeah.
It's funny. They tell lawyers, like, you don't go asking questions that you don't know the answer to. I'm going to ask a question that I don't exactly know the answer to. So, we started off just focused on day of timelines because, that was the problem that I heard planners just saying, these are the bane of my existence. I'm so stressed. It's so important. I got to get everything right. And so we focused for over a decade on just nailing the wedding day
Yeah.
timeline. And then through conversations with you and Lori, especially, I mean, Lori was like, and we had heard it before, but Lori just put it in like such a clear and compelling way. And your input also was valuable here that like Eddie, there's also the checklist, which
Mhm.
really is just a timeline under a different name. All it is a timeline that instead of focusing on the day of, it focuses on the multi month planning period, all the tasks that have to get done. So obviously, over the last year and a half or so, we always think it's going to take less time. We thought, oh,
Yeah.
6 months from now, what? No, it took a year and a half because we wanted to really do it right and to do it
Yeah.
with focus and intentionality. My question for you, especially because we just launched the all task view that allows planners now to see all of your checklist tasks in one view, because a lot of planners, Krisy, would tell me, I'm sure you and I talked about this at some point when, over the months when we were developing, they'd say, Eddie, I've if I'm using Google Docs for I've got 5 weddings coming up, that means I've got 5 different checklists that I got to go and refer to if I want to stay on top of everything. So they wanted that one centralized view. My question for you, and please feel free to be brutally honest. I know there's still more work that we need to do on our checklist features. How are you honestly feeling about the Timeline Genius checklist features as you're using them now? Because I know the checklist is a
Yeah.
very important thing for you.
It's extremely important. And honestly, I guess because I was so already ingrained in the timelines with TG that the checklist honestly just came so natural, where it was like it's finally up and running. Good, let's get going. And now that's just part of my onboarding process with my couples. So it just kind of integrated just so seamlessly for me because I was so gung ho timeline genius that the checklist is just an added bonus and added benefit. And again, yet another selling feature for me during my initial consultations because now not only do I pull up like, a video of the timeline, now I also have this as a video of my checklist. And when I have those couples who, when during that first half of the consultation where I'm asking them the questions and they say, I have a fear of keeping things on track, planning seems so overwhelming. Okay, well, guess what? You can, this is what my checklist looks like. We can collaborate together with it. I use that, that all task feature every month when I do my monthly check-ins to see what my couples have accomplished, what's left on their to-do list, and reminding them, don't forget, we got to check these things off. It's just a way where you can make your business more efficient, make your clients feel less overwhelmed, but also at the same time, like I mentioned, allows you to book couples because the couples that are getting in front of you are couples who use technology all day, every day. So if you have a technology that's easy to use, that makes you look like a rock star, to me, it's almost a no-brainer. And I don't think an Excel spreadsheet makes you look like a rock star. It just doesn't.
Yeah. And we also have CWP templates. Like
Yeah,
Lori, you guys worked hard to give us, industry leading templates for people when they want to start their checklist. They can see, these are the tasks that need to get done. So that is awesome.
exactly. Because the situation where there are some planners who don't have that base education and just kind of starting their business, their checklist may not be what it needs to be. And if
Right.
it's not, obviously utilize this template, but for sure check out CWP to gain your certification and get that knowledge that you need to get.
So just to kind of close things out here, and I could do this all day. Um, what for you, Krisy? Tell me one of the most gratifying things that's happened to you over the course of your career as a
Oh,
planner educator.
as a
Just like what
planner.
what just jumps out, and you can do both if you want to. Like, yeah, what's one of the most gratifying things that's happened to you?
I'll say with CWP being where I am now with it, because I initially just started out as Eddie, teaching just alongside Lori and just having that educator role. And to be able to work alongside a company that was basically the foundation for my success in my wedding planning career kind of blows me away. Like almost every day when I sit down and I start work for CWP, there are some days, and even like when we have like our partner calls and I'm on this call with all these top execs and CEOs, there are some days where I'm like, what am I doing here? I'm
Yeah,
like, how am I at the same level with these phenomenal business owners and people? But it's been so humbling, and also I feel so grateful that this business that Lori built, because she built this thing from the ground up, and to see where it is now, and for her to trust me to ride this ride with her
yeah,
blows my mind. Because now seeing the back end of this, and I think everyone who meets Lori Hartwell knows her heart. They know how much she pours into this industry and how much her ultimate goal is just for this industry to be better. And that's what she wants to leave her legacy to be on this earth, is that she made an impact on this industry, and she has. But for her to trust me to be on the passenger side with her
yeah,
in growing and making the industry better, that blows my mind every single day, that
yeah,
that she trusts me with that. So I'm forever grateful for that. And I'm still always learning with her too, and how to, in this role that I am in now as COO, that journey has just it's been so wild, and I'm so grateful for it. When it comes to my wedding planning, I definitely think, I've been featured in a lot of publications. That was unexpected. I was featured in the New York Times article about weddings at plantations. That was an unexpected thing that I never thought I would feature in the New York Times. And then, being on the list with Martha Stewart naming one of the top wedding planners to follow, that's huge. Because I don't plan all these huge celebrity weddings. I am the wedding planner for an everyday Tennessee couple, and to be along the list of the other top wedding planners it was phenomenal. But like Lori said, she's like, you deserve to be on that list. So I felt very, I do deserve to be on that list. But that was just like a wow moment for me in my wedding planning career.
That is cool. Well, there's one more question, Krisy, that I ask of everybody that comes on the podcast, and it is, if you could give one piece of advice to everybody listening to us, based on all of your years as an educator, as a wedding planner, and just as a human being walking this earth, like what piece of advice would you give, especially to our planners, to help them personally and professionally achieve their dreams?
Kind of tying back into what we've been talking about when it comes to your ego, don't let your ego get in the way of you becoming the best version of yourself that you could possibly be. You and that can really stop a lot of people from just growing. And by growing and wanting that education, like it just blows my mind that there are people who don't want that, because I'm like, you have no clue what doors are going to be able to open for you if you just let your guard down a bit, put your ego down a bit, and open up that door to just get some fresh insights, whether it's from CWP or another phenomenal educator. Just be open to education. Like, to me, that can be such a game changer in your career. And I really want your listeners and planners to know that it can really make a lasting impact on your career. And I look at me in that. I started out my business with one booked wedding and I got my certification. Fast forward over a decade later, I am now the COO of an international wedding planning certification company. Like, what? And that is all because I wanted that education. I wanted to strive for excellence. And to me, striving for excellence means that you have to be humble enough to know that you also need education. They just go hand in hand. Education and excellence are just, they fold like, like that. You have to be able to recognize that. And that's how you, to me, become a phenomenal wedding planner, is letting that your guard down, letting your ego down, and being open to learning and becoming a better version of yourself.
I love that. It's beautiful, Krisy, and powerful. And, for what it's worth, my only vested interest here is saying what's best for the people that have invested their time to listen to us. And I will say, as an objective onlooker here, yeah, run, do not pass, go get your certification. No matter how long you've been doing this, if you want to grow, which hopefully everybody listening does, if you want to stay abreast and just be the best version of yourself professionally that you can be as a wedding planner, go get certified. I've seen what you guys offer. I know the prices that you charge, and the value is off the charts. So if people, once again, Krisy, if people want to get in touch with you, and if people want to get certified, if they want to join the Certified Wedding Planner Society, how can they go about doing those things?
Yep, you can visit our website, cwpsociety.com. You can also follow us on social, and that's at CWP Society. That's kind of where you can get to know a little bit more about us. With our website, you can learn about our different certifications and programs that we offer. We do have a free pro membership. So if you're not quite ready yet, you can just dive into that free pro membership to get to know us a little bit better. We also have a podcast. So the Wedding Planner Profiles podcast, it's another way where you can get to know us and how we teach and educate a little bit better. But we would love, love, love to welcome you to our community. It is quite different. It comes from how Lori built this business, and she did build this business with integrity, with kindness. We do not come at you with, oh, that's a stupid question. Like that, we're not that. That's not how our community is. So we would absolutely love for you to be part of this.
Well, Krisy, on behalf of our Timeline Genius community and all of our podcast listeners, I want to say thank you for taking time to do this. You're a beautiful soul. Our industry is blessed and privileged to have you. And yeah, just always a treat interacting with you. So thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Eddie. This was so much fun. I know we could talk for 2+ hours every day. So thank you.
My pleasure.